You ever have one of those moments where everything just clicks? Like after years of struggling, you finally step back and think, damn, I actually did it. That was me, standing in the doorway of my brand new apartment, the keys still clutched in my hand. After 6 long years of grinding, saving, and sacrificing, I finally had a place to call my own. My name's Tessa. I'm 28, and this is my story. 2 years ago, I landed the promotion that changed everything. When my manager called me into his office, I was convinced I'd screwed something up. Instead, he slid a contract across the desk, one that came with a fat pay raise. From that moment on, I lived like a broke college student. No splurging, no vacations, not even takeout unless it was absolutely necessary. Every penny went straight into my savings. But let's be real, it wasn't just my discipline that made this happen. A year ago, my grandmother, my mom's mom, passed away. It was sudden, a heart attack in her sleep. She was my rock, the only person who truly made me feel seen in my family. And in her will, she left me $150,000. That money, combined with what I'd saved, meant I could finally stop daydreaming and start house hunting. When I found this apartment, a 2-bedroom loft with big windows and a view of the city skyline, I knew it was the one. The best part? No mortgage. When I told the realtor I was paying in full, she blinked at me like I had 3 heads. The moment I signed those papers, I felt something I hadn't in years: security. Of course, I did what anyone would do. I took 1,000,000 pictures and posted them online. The comments flooded in. Congrats, Tessa! So proud of you! Living the dream! When's the housewarming party? It felt incredible to have people celebrate my success. But then my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach twist. Dad. Tessa, he said, his voice as dry as sandpaper. Come over for lunch next Saturday. That call brought everything rushing back the years. I'd spent trying to be enough for him, only to be treated like an afterthought. See, my mom died when I was 10, cancer. It shattered our family. But Dad, he didn't waste time mourning. Less than a year later, he married Janine, and a year after that, my half-brother, Liam, was born. Janine never liked me much, not before Liam, and definitely not after. Suddenly, there were new rules in the house, and funny enough, they only seemed to apply to me. Tessa, keep your voice down. Tessa, don't bring friends over. Tessa, turn that music off. Now. Meanwhile, Liam got whatever he wanted: new clothes, the latest video games, trips to amusement parks. It was like I had become invisible in my own home. If it weren't for Grandma Ann, I don't know how I would have survived. When things got unbearable, I'd hop on my bike and ride to her house. Her door was always open. My cousins, Jake, Olivia, and little Noah, spent a lot of time there too. Unlike Liam, they actually treated me like family. We'd spend hours playing card games, watching movies, or just hanging out in the backyard while Grandma made lemonade. She was my safe haven. Meanwhile, back home, things only got worse. Liam turned into a full-on nightmare. He'd take my things and lose them, spill juice on my homework, spread rumors about me at school. But somehow, I was always the problem. Tessa, why are you making Liam upset? Tessa, stop antagonizing your brother. Dad didn't even pretend to listen to my side. By the time I got my college acceptance letter, I could barely wait to leave. The university was 3 states away, and thanks to Grandma helping with what my scholarship didn't cover, I got my fresh start. College was freedom. For the first time in my life, I could just breathe. I worked my ass off, called Grandma twice a week, and tried to forget my father's family even existed. Dad rarely called anyway. He was too busy with his real family. After graduation, I moved back to my home state. I had a job offer from Weston & Company, and the salary was too good to pass up. I figured I'd stay with Dad and Janine for a few months until I found my own place. But when I called to let them know, Janine shut it down real quick. Oh, we gave your room to Liam, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. He needs the extra space, you understand. Dad said nothing. Not one damn word. Thankfully, Grandma took me in. I stayed with her while I started my new job, and after a few months, I moved into my own tiny apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then, a year ago, she passed. She left her house to my cousins, which made sense since they lived closer and helped take care of it. And to me, she left that $150,000. In her will, she wrote, "For the granddaughter who reminds me most of her mother." The past year had been quiet. Dad and his perfect family barely acknowledged me. They didn't even invite me to Christmas, not that I was surprised. I spent it with Aunt Sarah and my cousins instead. Honestly, it was the best holiday I'd had in years. And now he was calling me back to the house. That Saturday, I pulled up to my father's place with my stomach in knots. The closer I got, the heavier the dread became. I checked my watch. 11:57. Still early, but I'd rather be early than give Janine another reason to talk down to me. I rang the doorbell, counting the seconds before someone answered. Dad opened the door, his expression unreadable. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. "No greeting. No. How have you been?" Just a command. The living room felt like a setup. Janine sat perched in her favorite chair like some kind of queen, and Liam was sprawled across the couch, scrolling through his phone, not even looking up when I walked in. "Sit down," Dad said, gesturing to the lone chair across from them. I sat. The silence stretched thick between us before Dad finally cleared his throat. "Liam's starting college this fall," he announced, as if this was breaking news. I nodded, unsure where this was going. "He needs a place close to campus," Dad continued. Then, after a pause, he finally got to the point. "Your apartment would be perfect." My brain stuttered. "Wait, what?" Janine gave me a tight-lipped smile. "We want you to give your apartment to Liam." I let out a short laugh, certain I'd misheard them. But the way they looked at me, they were dead serious. They actually thought I'd hand over my home, the one I worked years to afford to Liam. Dad met my eyes. "Liam needs it more than you do." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. It never came. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. Give Liam my apartment? The one I worked my ass off to afford? The one I bought outright with years of sacrifice and my grandmother's gift? I blinked at them. "You can't be serious." Janine scoffed. "Tessa, don't be selfish. Your brother needs a stable place to live while he studies. Student housing is expensive and, well, you don't really need a 2-bedroom, do you?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Oh, so now we're worried about expenses? Where was this concern when I needed a place to stay after college? Or when you told me Liam needed my old bedroom?" Dad sighed, rubbing his temples like I was exhausting him. "Tessa, you're doing well. You have a good job, no real responsibilities. Liam is just starting out. Don't you think it makes sense for you to help your family?" That word, family. The same one that had shut the door in my face when I had nowhere to go. "No," I said, my voice steady. "No, it doesn't make sense. What makes sense is that Liam gets a job and finds his own place. Like I did." Liam, who had been silent this whole time, finally looked up from his phone. "Jesus, Tess, why are you acting like such a bitch about this?" I whipped my head toward him. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, shrugging. "It's just an apartment. It's not like you earned it. Grandma left you money, and you got lucky." Something in me snapped. Lucky? I had worked my fingers to the bone for years to make sure I could afford my own home. I had lived off ramen, skipped vacations, and budgeted every dollar while he was handed everything on a silver platter. I leaned forward, my voice dangerously calm. "Say that again." Liam smirked but didn't repeat it. He knew better. I stood up, grabbing my purse. "I'm not giving up my apartment. This conversation is over." Dad's voice hardened. "Tessa, sit down." "We're not finished." "Oh, I am," I shot back. "And if you call me again about this, I promise you won't like my response." I walked out, half expecting Dad to stop me. He didn't. Janine muttered something under her breath, and Liam went back to his phone like nothing had happened. That should have been the end of it, but of course it wasn't. The next morning, my phone buzzed. "Dad." I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, another call. Then a text. "Dad, Tessa, we need to talk." "Call me back." I ignored it. A few hours later, another text, this time from Janine. "Janine, I'm disappointed in you. Your father is heartbroken. We raised you better than this." I almost threw my phone across the room. Raised me better? She had done nothing but push me aside for the last 18 years, and now she wanted to act like some kind of moral authority? Then a final message from Dad. "If you can't do this one thing for your family, don't expect us to be there for you in the future." I exhaled sharply. Bold of him to assume they'd ever been there for me in the past. I went about my week, trying to put it out of my mind, but it was like an itch. I couldn't scratch. The audacity of it all. They really thought I'd just roll over and hand Liam my apartment, like it was some kind of hand-me-down. By Friday, I decided I needed a break. My cousin Olivia was hosting a game night at her place, and the second I walked in, I knew I'd made the right choice. The air smelled like fresh pizza, and the sound of laughter filled the room. Jake and Noah were already arguing over which board game to play, and Olivia handed me a drink the second I walked through the door. But the moment I sat down, Olivia gave me a look. All right, Spill. You've got that I'm about to murder someone face. So I told them everything. The call, the meeting, the entitlement. By the time I was done, Jake looked like he wanted to throw a chair. Are you freaking kidding me? He said. They really thought you'd just give him your place? They think they can guilt trip me into it, I muttered, swirling my drink. Noah let out a low whistle. Man, they really don't know you at all, do they? Olivia leaned forward. So what are you gonna do? I shrugged. Ignore them, I guess. Block their numbers if I have to, Jake smirked. Or, you could make sure they never ask again. I raised an eyebrow. What are you suggesting? He leaned back, crossing his arms. You want to hit them where it hurts? Find something they don't want you to know. Something that flips the script. I stared at him, thinking about it. Janine had always acted too smug, too self-satisfied, like she had everything under control. And Liam? He had never faced a real consequence in his life. A plan started forming in my head. Noah must have seen something on my face because he grinned. Oh, I know that look. Olivia laughed. That's the Tessa's about to burn someone's life down face. Jake raised his glass. Then let's get the marshmallows. I spent the next few days digging. Social media, old connections, anything I could find. It didn't take long to stumble across something interesting. Janine had always bragged about Liam's college acceptance, talking about how proud she was of his hard work. But something wasn't adding up. I checked the school's website admissions records, scholarships, anything that might give me a clue. Then I found it. A list of students who had been accepted through a special discretionary program, one meant for donors' children. My heart started racing. Did Dad pay for Liam's admission? It wouldn't be surprising. He'd always thrown money at problems instead of actually parenting. But this could be something. I kept digging, cross-checking donation records, and that's when I found it. A $50,000 donation to the university's scholarship fund 6 months before Liam's acceptance letter arrived. Bingo! I sat back, staring at the screen. So, Liam wasn't some genius student, he was just another rich kid whose daddy bought his way in. And given how strict the university was about keeping up appearances, if this got out, well, let's just say it wouldn't be a good look for the family. I smiled to myself. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. Game on. I spent the next 2 days thinking things through. The idea of exposing Liam and Dad was really tempting, but I didn't want to be reckless. If I was going to do this, it had to be airtight. So I got to work. First, I took screenshots of everything: the donor list, the university's discretionary admissions program, and Dad's $50,000 scholarship fund donation. Then, I dug into Liam's academic records. He had never been a top student, barely scraped by in high school, no honors, no extracurriculars, nothing that would have caught a university's attention. Yet somehow, he got into a competitive program? Yeah, right. The more I looked, the sloppier it got. Janine had bragged about Liam's acceptance on Facebook months before official decisions were even sent out. A rookie mistake. I had everything I needed. Now, I just had to decide what to do with it. By Wednesday, Dad tried calling again. I let it ring. Then Janine texted, Janine, Tessa ignoring your family is childish. We're trying to work things out. Sure. Now they wanted to work things out when they thought I might cave. That night, as I was scrolling through my phone, another message popped up. This one wasn't from Dad or Janine. It was from an unknown number. Unknown, hey, it's Liam. Can we talk? I stared at the screen. Liam had never reached out to me directly, never apologized, never acknowledged me unless it was to insult me. And now, out of nowhere, he wanted to talk? Against my better judgment? I replied. Me? About what? Liam, look, I know things got weird, but this whole apartment thing, it's not my idea. It's mom and dad pushing for it. I don't even care that much. Oh, now he didn't care? Me. Then why did you call me a bitch when I said no? Liam? Okay, that was out of line. I was pissed, but I don't actually want to take your place. They just won't let it go. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but something about his tone felt different, not as cocky. Me. Why are you telling me this? A long pause. Then, Liam, because they don't stop, Tess. Not with me, not with you. They're always pushing, always expecting. I get it now, I frowned. Since when did Liam get anything? Me? What are you trying to say? Liam, I know about the money, okay? The donation. I saw the paperwork in Dad's office last week. They bought my spot. And now, I have to keep up the grades or I'm screwed. If I fail, I lose my place. Mom's been making me study nonstop, and Dad's breathing down my neck. I feel like I can't breathe. I leaned back, processing. So Liam did know. And for the first time, he wasn't bragging, he sounded miserable. Did that change anything? I wasn't sure. Me? Why are you telling me this? Liam, because I'm tired of being their puppet. And because you're the only one who's ever told them no. That hit harder than I expected. Me? What do you want from me, Liam? Liam, I don't know. I don't want to be them. I stared at his message for a long time before locking my phone. The next day, Dad called again. This time, I answered, Tessa, I'm glad you finally picked up. I could already hear the forced patience in his voice. What do you want, Dad? I want to talk face to face. Can you come over tonight? I debated. If I went, it'd be on my terms. And if things escalated, I had the perfect card to play. Fine, I'll be there at 7. When I arrived, the tension hit me before I even walked through the door. Janine was sitting stiffly on the couch, her arms crossed. Dad stood by the fireplace, looking as authoritative as ever. And Liam, well, Liam sat hunched over, staring at the floor. Tessa, Dad started. Let's be reasonable. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? That's new. Janine sighed dramatically. Can we stop with the attitude? This isn't easy for any of us. I crossed my arms. No, I imagine it's not easy to try and manipulate your daughter into giving up her home. Dad clenched his jaw. We're asking you to help your brother. That's what family does. I tilted my head. Is it? Because I don't remember anyone helping me when I needed it. Silence. Liam shifted uncomfortably. I took a deep breath. You know what, Dad? I was going to walk away. I was just going to let this whole thing go and move on with my life. But then I did some digging. His expression faltered. I know about the donation. Janine went pale. What? The $50,000 you gave the university right before Liam was accepted. The special discretionary admission list. All of it. Dad's face turned red. You went through my finances? I shrugged. Maybe you should have been more careful, because if I could find it, other people can too. Janine shot up. You wouldn't. I cut her off. You want to talk about family, Dad? Let's talk. If this gets out, Liam could get expelled. That whole hard work narrative you two love so much? Gone. And considering how much you care about appearances, I'd say that's a pretty big problem. Dad's hands clenched into fists. You wouldn't do that to your own brother. I glanced at Liam. He looked away. I wouldn't, I said. But you need to understand something. You have zero control over me now. You can't guilt me, you can't manipulate me, and you sure as hell can't threaten me. Janine opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. This conversation is over. You will never, and I mean never, ask me for anything again. I turned to Liam. You have a choice. You don't have to be them, but that's on you. Then I walked out. That night, I got one last text. Liam, thank you. I didn't reply. For the first time in my life, I was free. And damn, it felt good. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. I'd made my stance clear. I had leverage. I walked out of that house with my head high, knowing for the first time in my life, they couldn't touch me. But if there's one thing about my father and Janine, it's that they never know when to quit. A week passed, then 2. No calls, no texts. It was eerily quiet, but I wasn't stupid. They were up to something. Then one morning, I stopped by my favorite coffee shop before work. I was standing in line, half awake, when my phone buzzed with a notification. A new email from my landlord. Subject, urgent lease violation notice. My stomach sank. What the hell? I clicked it open. Tessa, we received a formal complaint regarding unauthorized subleasing activity in your unit. Per the terms of your contract, any subleasing or transfer of residence without approval is a violation of policy. Please contact us immediately to resolve this matter. Best, property management, the first nearly dropped my phone. Unauthorized subleasing, that was complete bullshit. And then, like clockwork, my dad called. I answered, skipping the pleasantries. What did you do? Good morning to you too, he said, his voice calm, almost smug. I assume you got the email. I gritted my teeth. I'm not subleasing anything. I know, he said smoothly, but your landlord doesn't. I froze. I stopped myself, gripping my coffee cup so tightly I thought it might crack. You actually called my landlord and lied? I simply expressed concern, he said. Told them I was worried about suspicious activity at your unit, that I'd seen unfamiliar people coming and going, that maybe you were renting it out under the table. My skin burned with rage. You're seriously trying to get me kicked out of my own apartment? I warned you, he said, voice cold. You turned your back on this family, Tessa. You made your choice. Now you can live with it. He hung up. I stood there, my heart pounding, the smell of coffee suddenly making me sick. They weren't just trying to pressure me anymore. They were trying to ruin me. I got to work late, still fuming. Olivia called as soon as she saw my message about the email. Are you serious? They actually pulled that? Yeah, I muttered. And now I have to convince my landlord that my own father is trying to sabotage me. We need to hit back, she said. They're trying to shake you. Don't let them. She was right. I needed to be smart. That afternoon, I set up a meeting with my landlord. I walked in with my lease agreement, proof of residency, and a folder of emails showing I'd never missed a payment. Tessa, my landlord said when I sat down, this complaint came from someone claiming to be a concerned family member. I sighed. I know. It's my father. We're estranged, and he's doing this out of spite. My landlord studied me. Do you have any proof you're not subleasing? Yes. I handed over a printout of my utility bills, all in my name. And if you check your security cameras, you'll see the only person living there is me. She skimmed the papers, nodding. This all checks out. Honestly, I figured something was off. He called 3 times, seemed too eager for me to take action. So, I'm not in trouble? She smiled. No. Your lease is fine, but if he contacts us again, let me know. I exhaled, tension easing from my shoulders. I won this round, but I knew my father he wasn't done. Sure enough, a few days later, Liam texted. Liam, heads up. Mom's been making calls. I think she's trying something else. I stared at my screen, exhaustion settling in. Me? Why are you telling me this? Liam, because it's messed up. You deserve to know. I didn't know what to say to that, but I appreciated the warning. The next morning, my bank app pinged me with a fraud alert. My heart nearly stopped. I opened it up 3 declined transactions from a credit card I hadn't used in years. A card I'd once shared an account on with Dad. It all clicked. They were trying to make it look like I was running up charges. Probably planned to report me for fraud, tank my credit, something to make my life hell. I immediately called my bank, shut down the card, and flagged all recent attempts. Thankfully, since the charges hadn't gone through, my score wasn't affected. But I was done. I called Liam. He picked up after the first ring. Hey, tell them to stop, I said, voice deadly calm. I mean it. I have enough dirt to bury them. I wasn't going to go nuclear, but if they keep pushing, I will. A pause. Then I know. I wasn't expecting that. You know? I told them to stop too, Liam admitted. They don't listen to me either. That hit harder than I wanted to admit. Then maybe it's time to walk away from them, I said. Another pause. Maybe. That was the closest thing to an admission I'd ever get from Liam. That night, I sat in my apartment scrolling through the screenshots I'd collected. The donation proof, the emails, the financial records. I had enough to ruin their reputation, destroy their precious image. One email to the right people, maybe the university, maybe the IRS, maybe even the news, and their whole world would collapse. I hovered over the send button, but then I stopped. Revenge was tempting. So tempting. But I had something better. Freedom. I had already won. I was happy. I was thriving. They had nothing on me anymore, and they were flailing, desperate to pull me back into their toxicity. I wasn't giving them that power. So I did the last thing they expected. I blocked every single one of them. Dad, Janine, their numbers, their emails. I wiped them from my life with a single tap. And then I let it all go. No revenge. No final blow. Just silence. Because sometimes the best revenge is moving on. Blocking them should have been the end of it. For a while, it actually felt like it was. My phone was silent. No calls, no messages, no sudden urgent emails. My apartment finally felt like mine again, free from their looming presence. I went to work, met up with friends, and started living my life without looking over my shoulder. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't last. And I was right. It started with an unexpected visit. One evening, after a long day at work, I was curled up on my couch with a movie playing in the background when a loud bang, bang, bang echoed through my apartment. Someone was at my door. I frowned, setting my drink down. No one I knew ever dropped by unannounced. My friends would text first. My stomach twisted with suspicion as I got up and peered through the peephole. Dad. I froze. Another knock, harder this time. Tessa, open the door. My hands clenched into fists. I wasn't scared, I was pissed. I'd made my boundaries clear, and he still had the audacity to show up like this. I took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and swung it open. What are you doing here? I demanded. Dad barely looked at me before pushing past, stepping inside like he still had control over my life. I shut the door hard behind him. Excuse me? I tried calling. His voice was sharp, accusatory, as if I was the one who had wronged him. You ignored me. I folded my arms. Yeah, that was the point. His nostrils flared, but I didn't care. If he thought he could intimidate me, he was in for a rude awakening. This has gone on long enough, he said. You need to stop acting like a child and start taking responsibility for this family. I actually laughed. Oh, that's rich. Tell me, Dad, when exactly has this family ever taken responsibility for me? He waved a hand like I was being dramatic. You were never neglected, Tessa. You're just bitter. Bitter? I repeated, my voice rising. Bitter that I was treated like an outsider in my own home? That I was kicked out while Liam got everything? That you and Janine tried to sabotage my entire life just because I wouldn't hand over my apartment? Dad clenched his jaw. We did what we had to do. I stared at him. That's the problem. You think this is normal. That manipulating, guilt-tripping, and controlling people is just what families do. He scoffed. Spare me the lecture. You've been selfish from the moment you got that inheritance. Do you even hear yourself? Living in a 2-bedroom apartment all alone while your brother struggles? How do you justify that? I clenched my teeth. Because I earned it. Dad stepped closer, his voice low. You don't know what real struggle is. Something in me snapped. I took a slow, steady breath. No, Dad, you don't know what struggle is. You've spent your whole life controlling people to get what you want. You call it family loyalty. I call it bullshit. He didn't like that. His face turned red, his fists clenched at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might actually yell. But then, something shifted. The anger in his expression flickered just for a second into something else. Panic. That's when it hit me. He wasn't here to intimidate me. He was here because he was desperate. I narrowed my eyes. What's really going on, Dad? Silence. I stepped closer. Why now? Why show up at my door acting like this is some noble cause? He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. Your grandmother's money is gone. My stomach dropped. What? He wouldn't look at me. The money. The business deal I made it fell through. I blinked. What business deal? Dad hesitated. Then, almost too casually, he said, I invested in a real estate project last year. It was supposed to be a sure thing. I could barely process what I was hearing. You mean, you gambled your savings? It wasn't gambling. You lost everything. Dad tensed. I can fix it. I let out a breathless laugh. That's why you wanted my apartment. Not for Liam, for you. He didn't deny it. Everything clicked. The pressure, the guilt trips, the sabotage. It was never about Liam. Dad was drowning, and instead of owning up to it, he tried to manipulate me into saving him. I felt something inside me harden. "You did this to yourself," I said quietly. He bristled. "I did this for my family." "No, you did this because you thought you were invincible." Dad took a step forward, but I held up a hand. "I'm done, Dad. I'm not bailing you out. I'm not giving you my apartment. I am not your safety net." He clenched his jaw. "So that's it? You're just going to let your own father suffer?" I tilted my head. "Kind of like how you let me suffer?" Silence. His face twisted, like he wanted to say something, maybe lash out, maybe beg. But in the end, he just shook his head. "You're making a mistake." I opened the door. "No, you did." For the first time in his life, he had no comeback. He walked out. And I let him go. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the city lights through my window. For years, I had wanted some kind of closure, an apology, a moment where my father finally saw me, realized what he'd done. But now, I didn't need it. He would never change. And for the first time, I was okay with that. I had my own life, my own future, a future that didn't involve him, or Janine, or their endless cycles of manipulation. And that was freedom. The silence that followed felt unreal. For years, I had been trapped in a cycle waiting for my father to change, for my family to suddenly see me. But the moment he walked out of my apartment, I knew it was over. There was no final blow, no dramatic confrontation where he realized how wrong he had been, just reality settling in. And I was fine with that. A week passed, then two. For the first time in forever, I felt light. No more phone calls, no more guilt trips, no one trying to gaslight me into believing I owed them something. I could finally just live. I threw myself into work, into spending time with my cousins and friends. Olivia and I went out for drinks one night, and as we laughed over margaritas, she leaned in with a smirk. "So, how does it feel?" I raised an eyebrow. "How does what feel?" She grinned. "Being the most unbothered person in the universe." I snorted. "Not gonna lie, it's pretty great." And it was. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the weight of their expectations. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, bracing for the next guilt trip. I had finally let them go. Then, out of nowhere, Liam texted me. "Liam, hey, can we meet up?" I stared at the message for a long time. Did I owe him anything? No. But I wasn't angry at Liam. Not anymore. He had been a pawn in all of this, just like I had been for years. And whether I liked it or not, he was the only one in that house who had shown even the smallest hint of wanting something different. So I replied, "Me, fine. Coffee shop by my place. Tomorrow at 6. The next evening, I walked into the cafe, spotting Liam right away. He looked different, tense, like he hadn't been sleeping well. Good. I grabbed my drink and sat across from him. "All right. What do you want?" Liam exhaled. I wanted to say, "I get it now." I tilted my head. "Do you?" He nodded, running a hand through his hair. "They turned on me the second you stopped playing along." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Dad's a wreck. The money's gone and Mom's been spiraling. And now that you're out of the picture, they've shifted everything onto me. The pressure, the expectations, everything." I frowned. "What did you think was going to happen?" Liam looked down. "I don't know. I guess. I always thought they were right, that you were just being dramatic. But now? Now I see it. They don't care about anyone but themselves." I sipped my coffee. "Took you long enough," Liam sighed. "I deserve that." "Yeah, you do." Silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, but not exactly warm either. Finally, he spoke again. "I want out." I studied him carefully. "Out of what?" He hesitated. "That house, that life, the whole thing." I leaned back. "Then leave." Liam looked at me like it wasn't that simple. "But it was. You're an adult, Liam. No one's holding you there." He let out a short laugh. "You make it sound easy." I shook my head. "No, it's not easy. It's never easy, but it's necessary." He was quiet for a long time. Then, finally, he nodded. "I think I'm ready." 2 months later, I got another text. "Liam?" I moved out. I blinked at the message. I wasn't expecting that. Me, where to? Liam, a friend's place for now. But I'm figuring it out. I stared at the screen, rereading his words. I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Relief? Pride? Something in between? But I knew one thing for sure. Liam was finally making his own choices. And that was something. A few weeks later, I ran into my landlord in the lobby. She smiled at me. Hey, just so you know, your father called again. I stiffened. What did he say? She rolled her eyes. More nonsense about your apartment, but don't worry, I shut him down immediately. I exhaled, shaking my head. Figures. She gave me a knowing look. He's desperate, huh? I nodded. Yeah, but it's not my problem anymore. And I meant it. Months passed. My life moved forward. Promotions at work, weekend trips with friends, laughing until my stomach hurt. My father? I didn't hear from him again. Janine? She was a ghost to me. Liam? He was still figuring things out, but for the first time, he was doing it on his own. And me? I was free. No more guilt. No more manipulation. No more bending over backward for people who never cared about me. For the first time in my life, I was truly, completely happy. And that was the best revenge of all. Story 2. Sitting in my leased flat, I gazed at my few possessions strewn around the space. The little bookcase that holds my assortment of cookbooks. I had discovered the used coffee table at a secondhand shop. My coworker's housewarming gift to me was a potted plant. There wasn't much to show for 24 years of existence, but as I absorbed it all, a grin appeared on my face. I was at liberty to comprehend how I arrived here, but you'd have to go all the way back to my 7-year-old self. Everything changed at that point. My parents gave birth to the twins at that time. I recall the day when Emma and Ethan were brought home by Mom and Dad. Being a big sister thrilled me. We were standing in the nursery, staring down at the 2 little bundles, with Dad's arm over my shoulder. He squeezed my shoulder and murmured, "You're quite grown up now, Layla. Their older sister will need to assist in caring for these 2. I proudly puffed up my chest and nodded excitedly. I didn't understand the true meaning of those words. Setting the table while Mom fed the twins and getting toys from the living room to get diapers were the first little tasks. When their father called for them, "Be a nice girl and assist with dusting the coffee table, Layla." With a furry Ethan bouncing on her hip, Mom would say, "Can you put these clothes away, Layla?" As he tried to soothe Emma to sleep, Dad would ask. I first enjoyed feeling significant and useful. I would scurry about the home, feeling proud of myself as I finished my little chores. But those chores increased tenfold as I grew older. While my parents conducted errands, I kept an eye on the twins. "Watch out for your sister and brother," Mom would say, reaching for her handbag. "In a few hours, we will return. However, Katie asked me to go to the park and play. I would suggest that you already know the response that your siblings must hear. Layla, you and your pals can play at a later time. No other moment ever appeared to exist." I was required to keep an eye on the twins, feed them food, and ensure they didn't injure themselves. I adored Ethan and Emma. I couldn't help but notice how different things were for them, even though I truly did. The sharp reminder came on my 11th birthday. Mom went to the grocery shop and bought a tiny cake. Dad got a secondhand video game on sale and handed it to me. One of my friends who was permitted to visit gave me a bracelet that she had crafted herself. After playing a board game and eating cake, Mom announced that it was becoming late. The twins turned 4 a month later. In addition to face painting and balloon animals, there was a personalized cake with their name written in frosting. 15 preschoolers are racing around our backyard, as well as presents. So many presents. New games, toys, and clothing. While Emma and Ethan played with their new toys, I cleaned up and wrapped paper, food remnants, and party decorations for 2 hours after everyone had departed. By the age of 13, I was essentially in charge of our home. I would get the twins up every morning, assist them in getting dressed, prepare their breakfast, and pack their lunches. Before racing to get to my middle school on time, I would walk them to elementary school. I would pick them up from school, assist them with their homework, prepare supper, tidy the house, and work late into the night on my own assignments. Until I was 16, my parents, who both had full-time careers, seemed to forget. I was still a child. The situation worsened. I was called into the kitchen by my parents for a family gathering. However, the twins were left out. Dad stated gravely, "Layla, we need to talk about something important." Mom gave a nod. "We're experiencing some financial challenges. In order to provide for the family, we need you to work after school." I blinked, startled. "But what about looking after Emma and Ethan and doing my homework?" Mom remarked snidely. "You'll still have to do those things. A position with flexible hours is available." I applied the next day at the cafe 2 blocks from our home. When I informed Jerry, the owner, that I could work every day after school, he immediately hired me. I began cleaning tables, doing the dishes, and finally serving clients. My parents received every paycheck directly. When I begged to keep even a little portion for myself, I was given every dime. My mother gave me a look as if I had proposed setting the house on fire. "Layla," she said, "we provide you with food and a roof over your head. This money is needed for the family." It took me weeks to get the guts to face her once more. "I'm putting in a lot of effort in my job. If nothing else, I ought to acquire some pocket money." After giving me a fierce look, she eventually consented to pay me $100 every week. However, she gave it to me as if she were doing me a great favor. Expressed her opinion that I was being irrational. I was expected to take care of the twins, cook, and clean, even though I worked around 30 hours a week. I dragged myself home after a particularly hectic shift one evening. All I wanted to do was eat something and go to bed when my entire body had finished eating. My parents and the twins were seated at the dinner table, all of them glaring at me when I walked in. "What's happening?" I put my backpack down beside the door and asked. "Mom accused us of being hungry. Did you not prepare dinner?" Unable to understand what I was hearing, I gazed at them. "I had spent the entire day at work and school." "That's not an excuse," Dad said. "Dinner is your responsibility, you know." For the first time in my life, I felt something shatter inside of me. I spoke louder to them. "Are you serious? I worked for 6 hours straight after going to school. You're grown-ups." The twins are 9 years old. You couldn't all figure out how to prepare a sandwich. It was almost pleasant to hear the stunned hush that followed my shout. Then Mom got to her feet, her expression stern. "You have no right to talk to us like that. You will be respectful because this is our residence. Proceed to your room. You won't be having supper tonight." Dad called and ordered 2 pizzas for them and the twins while I was watching. Not for me. With my tummy rumbling, I got myself a cup of tea, cleaned everyone's dishes when they finished their pizza, and then I went to my room. It should have been a significant occasion when I graduated from high school. The majority of my friends had parents who were preparing for college, hosting parties, or purchasing gifts for them. Me? I used the small amount of money I had saved from my weekly stipend to purchase my own graduation gown. My parents arrived shortly prior to the commencement of the ceremony on the day of graduation. They listened to the remarks and gave me a courteous applause as I crossed the stage to get my diploma. Mom looked at her watch as soon as it was over. As I walked up to them with my graduation in hand, she exclaimed, "We have to get going. In an hour, Ethan has a soccer match." And they were gone in an instant. Among my students who were rejoicing, I stood by myself in my blue dress. My classmates attended festivities and after parties that evening. I was in the cafe for my shift. The owner, Jerry, was taken aback by my presence. "Isn't today your graduation, Layla?" "Why are you here?" I gave a shrug. "I must have the money." "You know, you're one of my finest employees," he added after observing me for a while. "Never be late and never be a whiner. However, a little cafe like this is not a good place to start a career." Unsure what to say, I glanced up. Downtown, my cousin Marco operates a restaurant. A really pleasant location. He is always searching for quality employees. Jerry wiped off the counter and went on. "If you would also want a faster speed, I could put in a word for you." I began working at Marco's restaurant 2 weeks later. The tips were much better, but the labor was more difficult and the hours longer. Naturally, I had to give my parents my first paycheck, which made them quite happy. The expectations didn't work during the day, but my routine shifted. Return home, prepare, tidy, and rest. Do it again. Emma and Ethan did little to assist, instead lounging on the couch and playing video games. After a 10-hour shift, one evening, Laundry was all over the floor and dirty dishes were piled high in the sink when I got home. Ethan, Emma, they were sprawled in front of the TV when I shouted out to them, "Would you all kindly assist me with cleaning up?" Ethan didn't even take his eyes off the game. "It's your responsibility. I'm not your maid." With waning patience, I said, "You are now 12. You can assist with household chores." Emma rolled her eyes. "We don't have to, according to Mom." That evening, I brought it up to my parents, but the discussion proceeded just as I had anticipated. Mom responded, barely glancing up from her magazine. "They're too young to worry about housework. When I was 7, I started helping out around the house." I made a point. Dad scowled. "That was not the same. You were older." I felt like screaming. Rather, I simply left, wondering how long I could continue living this way. The same tiresome cycle continued for 3 years. I gave my parents practically all of the money I earned working at Marco's restaurant. I saved just enough to get a new phone and some essential items when my old ones wore out. When my old one eventually passed away, I did my job well. Excellent. I was well liked by the clients. Marco saw that I was regarded by the other employees. I was summoned to Marco's office one lazy day. He was grinning as I walked in, but I was worried that I had done something incorrectly. He leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Layla, for what duration do you wish to work as a waitress?" It was a surprise question. "I'm not sure. I haven't given it much thought. You've been under my observation. You know every dish on the menu by heart. You are aware of which foods go well with various wines. I've noticed you observing the cooks in the kitchen." My cheeks started to get heated. "All I want to know is how the food is prepared." Marco gave a nod. "I had that thought. Listen, I have a suggestion for you. Cooking classes are something I'm willing to pay for. You may work in my kitchen while you train to be a cook. The hours are more consistent, and the money is higher. What are your thoughts?" What I was hearing was unbelievable. I had never before had any investors. I had never been given away ahead. I almost floated home for the first time that night. There was something that belonged to me, a possible future I could touch and see. I had prepared dinner as usual, and I was eager to inform my folks. I broke the news. Marco volunteered to cover the cost of my culinary classes. I couldn't contain my joy as I spoke. I could work at the restaurant as a cook. I was expecting congrats. My mother gave me a frown instead. "How many hours do you spend at home?" she inquired. "While you're attending these sessions, who will take care of the cooking and cleaning?" My enthusiasm burst like a burst balloon. I would still provide a hand. There would only be a few evening classes each week. Dad said, "We depend on you, Layla," as though I was unaware of it. The home is not self-sufficient. I saw Emma and Ethan, who are now 15 years old and quite capable of lending a hand, but they never asked. Within me, something solidified. I'm enrolled in the classes. I spoke aggressively. "I find this to be significant." My parents looked at each other, but they didn't continue to dispute. They saw that I was not going to back down. The culinary classes were thrilling despite their intensity. I was doing something for myself for the first time in my life. I gained knowledge of knife skills, sales tactics, and taste balance. I did pretty well in all of my classes at work. Zoe, a new waitress who joined at the same time I started my classes, became a buddy of mine. She was forthright, witty, and didn't tolerate rudeness. "You and your parents reside together then?" she inquired. During our break one day. "Yes, I do pay the rent together with my younger brother and sister." Uncomfortably, I moved. Not quite. "The majority of my paycheck goes to them." Zoe raised her eyebrows. "The majority? How much, for example?" "Nearly all of it. I just save enough for necessities. Additionally, while having a full-time job and attending these programs, prepare meals and clean for them." When she stated it that way, it sounded ridiculous. I made an effort to describe the dynamics of our family, how my siblings were different, and how I had always been required to pitch in. With every phrase, Zoe's shocked look grew as she listened. When I was done, she said, "Layla, that isn't typical. That's not acceptable. You're being taken advantage of by your relatives." "They are my relatives." "Weekly," I said. "What the heck?" Instead of using one person as a personal servant and ATM, families are meant to help one another. She bent over. "You must leave that place. Go about your own life." Her remarks stayed with me even though I shrugged it off. Was one actually being exploited? Was it really so irrational of my family to ask me that? It didn't take me long to find out. The twins' 16th birthday was celebrated with all the hoopla I had become accustomed to. For Ethan, Mom bought a unique cake in the style of a video game controller, while for Emma, she ordered a cake adorned with roses. Dad put balloons and streamers up all over the home. 20 of the twins were invited. Friends spent weeks organizing the ideal presents and placing food orders. That day, I was supposed to be at work, not by chance. I'd learned over the years to offer to work shifts at family get-togethers. Being there but unseen was more painful than being absent. Fortunately, I had a busy shift at the restaurant. My thoughts were diverted from what was going on at home by the continuous activity. I was hungry yet fatigued when I clocked out. During my shift, I hadn't had time to eat. The celebration was coming to an end when I arrived home. Some of the twins' pals were still present. The home appeared to have been struck by a tornado, and music was playing. In an attempt to have some food before dealing with the mess, I crept in via the kitchen door. I was ready to take my first taste when I sat down at the kitchen table and felt a platter of leftover pizza. Mom entered. Pulling the plate away from me, she remarked, "Oh good, you're home." The living room was a mess because of the children. "Are you able to begin tidying up?" I clenched my empty stomach as I gazed at her. "I didn't eat all day, Mom. All I want is something first. The visitors are going to go. Now you have to clean for me." There was no space for debate in her tone. I had an inside sensation. Change. "I'm starving. First, I'm going to eat." Mom's gaze grew strained. "Now, Layla." She grabbed my dish away entirely as I reached for it. "The dishes can wait till you've finished cleaning, Layla." That was the time. That was the very moment that I broke. I slowly got to my feet and met my mother's gaze. I've spent the entire day at work. Despite the anger that was growing within of me, I spoke steadily. "First, I'm going to eat." Before she could reply, Dad entered, followed by Emma and Ethan, who were beaming and excited. "Check out what we have." Ethan displayed the most recent smartphone model, which cost about $1,000 and had just been introduced. "Additionally, we both received computers," Emma said with a smile. "The most recent MacBooks." Something simply exploded as I turned my attention from their pricey presents to my empty stomach to the mess I had to clean. "Well done." I spoke louder than I meant to. "After school, when do you two start working?" There was silence in the room. Ethan and Emma gave me the appearance of someone who had sprouted a second head. "What?" Ethan inquired. "You know, I've been working since I was 16 years old." I glanced at my parents. At what point did they begin to support the family? My parents looked at each other and then, amazingly, grinned. "Layla," Dad stated in a patronizing manner, "the prospects of your sister and brother are promising. They must prioritize their studies over their jobs." Furthermore, I had a bleak future. My voice cracked as I asked. Mom wrapped Emma's shoulders in her arm. "The best is what they deserve. It is your responsibility to work and support your family." It was there, as obvious as day. I deserved the best, and so did my siblings. Obligation. "I understand." Silently, I said. Mom gave a nod. "Are you happy?" "Excellent. Please begin cleaning up now. It is a catastrophe in the living room." I proceeded to the sink and started the automated dishwashing. Behind me, my family began organizing presents and making plans for a trip that, as usual, excluded me. That night, I didn't get any sleep. I woke up and stared at my ceiling, reflecting on everything Zoe had said, all I had gone through, and everything I had finally come to understand completely. Nothing was going to be different. Unless I made a modification. By dawn, I had made up my mind. I waited for everybody to go. Dad and Mom are going to work. Ethan goes to school with Emma. I then filled a bag and 2 suitcases with my possessions. It took very little time. I have very little to show for my 23 years in this house. I hoped Zoe would answer when I phoned her. "Hello? What is going on?" She spoke in a happy tone. "Do you recall that you advised me to leave my parents' house?" I was trembling as I spoke. A pause occurred. "Yes, today I'm going to do it. Now. But I have to go somewhere. Goddamn. Come to my apartment, Layla. I have an extra bedroom. You are welcome to remain as long as necessary." After hanging up, I took a last glance around my bedroom before leaving. No note was left by me. Why even bother? When they got home to an unclean house and no food, they would figure it out. As we left the house where I had spent my whole life, the cabbie assisted me in packing my things. I thought I would feel something. Nostalgia, regret, and sadness. But I was just relieved. When the cab arrived to Zoe's apartment complex, she was there waiting for me. She gave me a passionate hug as she hurried out to assist with my baggage. When we had everything inside, "I'm really pleased with you," I said. She said, "This is a significant step." Her flat was compact yet comfortable, adorned with posters from concerts she had gone to and vibrant throws. The extra room was more than enough, with barely enough room for a bed and a small dresser. As I unpacked my stuff, I remarked, "I'll pay the rent, half or whatever, don't." Zoe gave a nod. "We will work things out. Don't hurry." That afternoon, we went to work together. It seemed as if I had shed a thick garment that I had been wearing for years. Marco saw the improvement right away. He responded, "You look different today." Upon my arrival at the eatery, I grinned. My parents' house was no longer my home. He arched an eyebrow without asking further questions. "Well done. Are you prepared for your shift?" My parents had left 20 missed calls on my phone by the time we wrapped up that evening's work. I showed Zoe. "Are you going to respond?" she inquired. "Not quite yet." On the way home, we made a stop at a liquor store and purchased a bottle of inexpensive red wine. We toasted my independence while sipping from mismatched cups on her little balcony back at the flat. My phone rang once more at 10 p.m. The name of my mother appeared on the screen. "I ought to respond," I said, glancing at the phone to finish the conversation. Zoe gave a supportive nod. I inhaled deeply before selecting accept. "Hi there? What on earth are you doing?" My mom's voice was high-pitched with fear and rage. "The house is in disarray. Dinner is not served. Hours have been spent on the phone. I left home." "Calmly," I said. A little stillness fell. "Moved out? What do you mean?" After packing, I departed. "I'm not returning." "Don't be silly," she yelled. "You can't simply walk away. Who will do the cleaning and cooking? Who will?" I said. "You might try doing it yourself. Or perhaps Ethan and Emma could assist, since they were the same age as me when I began working." "Layla." She became more accommodative in tone. "Return home?" "We must have a proper conversation about this," I responded. "No," and hung up. Hours passed as the calls and texts persisted. I switched off my phone. "How are you feeling?" As we finished the wine, Zoe inquired. I considered it. "Free. I'm afraid. I feel guilty. I'm relieved. Everything at once." She gave me a clink with her cup. "That seems about correct." When my shift finished the next day, my parents were waiting outside the eatery. I had anticipated them. I told Zoe to go ahead even though she offered to stay. This was something I had to do on my own. As soon as they saw me, they came over. Mom seems to have been weeping. Dad had a furious expression. "We must speak, Layla," Dad remarked as he attempted to grab my arm. I took a step back. "How about?" Mom's face fell flat. "We discussed everything, my love. We acknowledged that we have been overburdening you with work and exerting excessive pressure on you. You should return home, please. We'll adjust." I swear, I gave them each a look, observed them closely. They are statements of concern. Something about their beseeching gaze seemed phony. "Tell me." "Slowly," I said. "Do you find my absence or the loss of my income more upsetting?" For a moment, Mom's expression shifted. "However, it was sufficient. It's unfair. Your family is us. We are relying on your pay." It was there, the reality. I turned to leave after saying, "I'm not coming back. You're a self-centered girl." I was called after by Mom. Their comments faded behind me as I continued to walk after everything we had done for you. A year went by in a flash. I saved the remainder of my money, lived with Zoe, and paid my portion of the rent. I had never been happier than I was when I worked as a cook, making food, observing my meal being enjoyed by patrons, being appreciated rather than taken advantage of for my abilities. I had nearly forgotten about my family when a strange caller phoned on my phone. I replied against my better judgment. "Hi, Layla? Mom is here. I almost hung up. What are you looking for?" "We need to discuss the twins' college tuition," she remarked in a serious tone. Next September, they will begin their college education. To pay for it, we need your assistance. It was breathtakingly audacious. I take it you're kidding? Layla, this isn't funny. Family is helpful. Family. You must make a contribution, similar to how you assisted me in college, I inquired. Oh, hold on, you didn't. I didn't even get to go. She argued that was different. There is genuine potential in the twins. I had been striving to win her approval for years, thinking that I wasn't as worthy as my siblings. However, it is no longer the case. I firmly stated I'm not paying for their college. I will never give you another penny. You are ungrateful and selfish. Since I was 16, I have been providing for this family. I interrupted her. I gave you practically every dime I made while cooking and cleaning. You never showed me gratitude, showed me that you valued me or made me feel important. I'm finished. She got into a heated argument about my duty to my family and how I was disappointing them all. I said, "Goodbye, Mom," and hung up. After blocking her number, I changed mine just to be safe. The last link that had remained between us was finally broken. After that last decision, I obtained my own apartment 2 months later. It was a little studio with a bathroom and kitchenette. It was mine, though. We celebrated with takeaway on my used furniture after Zoe assisted me with moving in. She raised her Pepsi can and toasted to independence. I said, to choose myself, as I sat in my leased flat and examined my few possessions. I really feel liberated. Marco gave me a promotion to assistant chef yesterday. I'm putting money aside for culinary school. I'm creating a future based on my desires for the first time. My family is not missed. I occasionally ponder whether Emma and Ethan are learning how to cook and clean, or whether they have accepted jobs to augment their college income. But more than anything, I hope kids realize that love shouldn't be conditional something I took far too long to realize. Don't let that family take advantage of you. That your worth extends beyond what you can accomplish for other people. Story 3, I've always been that other daughter, and my name is Amber. You know, the person who, if at all, is acknowledged as an afterthought. I drag myself to my folks' place every Saturday for a customary family meal. However, I've been coming up with more and more reasons to avoid them recently. It was the same today. As anticipated, I parked my car in front of their small suburban house, took a big breath, and then entered, with her husband Tom standing next to her and their children Emma and Jack running about the living room. My older sister Lisa was already there. You've done it, Amber. As she adjusted the floral centerpiece, my mother hardly raised her head. No genuine welcome, no embrace. Hello, Mother? Dad? I gave my dad a nod while he was occupied discussing a sporting event with Tom. Has Lisa's parent-teacher conference reached you? Mom went into sister worship mode right away. Emma is reading 2 grade levels above her age, according to the teacher, and Jack's football coach believes he could be able to join the competitive squad the following season. Like a sponge, Lisa absorbed the attention with a smile. Jack was dragged to additional practice 3 times a week, and Emma and I have been doing those special reading cards every night. I sat down at the table in silence. I was hardly noticed. Nobody inquired about my life, work, or week. They never do things they don't know how to do. They never bothered to inquire about the fact that I completed a significant project at work 3 months ago that prevented our largest client from going bankrupt. I was given a promotion to senior project manager, a bonus of $50,000, and a pay rise that would have made Tom's large salary seem insignificant. Amber, pass the potatoes, Lisa remarked, staring at me. Poor Amber, remarked the one. Still renting, still unmarried, and still a nobody. I took a drink of wine and handed the potatoes. I have another secret. In order to find a flat to purchase, I called my friend Rachel, a real estate agent, for assistance. With my new job and the money I had saved for a down payment, I would have no trouble getting a mortgage. Why inform them, though? They would somehow turn it into a Lisa story. Or they would pretend to be shocked that I could afford it, which would be terrible still. The remainder of the meal went as usual. More exaltation of Lisa. Talk about Tom's work more. Additional tales of the ideal kids. I remained silent, allowing their remarks to pass me by without any effect. I had long since ceased caring what others thought. Rachel phoned me a month after that dinner to share some wonderful news. She had discovered the ideal apartment, a two-bedroom corner unit in a developing neighborhood with a contemporary kitchen and balcony. That night, I took a tour of it and fell in love right away. "Rachel, this is it," I murmured, tracing the marble countertop with my palm. "I'd like to make a proposal." I signed the mortgage documents 2 weeks later. I had a house now. The sensation was beyond description. Pride, achievement, liberty. I considered informing my family, but I chose to hold off until the next Saturday meal. For once, I would like to convey some positive news. I took a car to my folks' place on Saturday. Something was different as I went in, yet my name is still blazing in my chest. The air was filled with a strange hum of excitement. My parents were delighted, and Lisa's children were jumping about more than normal. "What's happening?" I hung up my jacket and asked. Mom and Dad looked at each other with delight. "We've decided," Dad said. "We're all heading to Hawaii for a family vacation. You're welcome to come." I considered it. My new job had just begun, and I hadn't had a holiday in 2 years. For a few weeks, there were no significant initiatives planned. I answered, "Yes, I can make it work." A smile sprang on Mom's face quickly. "Fantastic. Hawaii with the entire family. It will be flawless." I was surprised at how she responded. She seemed sincere in her joy at my arrival. I let myself feel included for a time, and it was a pleasant change. "We're leaving in 2 weeks," Dad said. "Before telling you, we wanted to make sure everyone could attend, even though we've been preparing this for a long." I took my unused, momentarily forgotten seat. A trip with the family may be pleasant. Perhaps things could be different apart from our normal routines, I thought. They could have a different opinion of me. As the meal went on, everyone talked about Hawaii. Things to bring, destinations to see, and things to do. I wasn't totally ignored for once. The majority of the questions I was asked were more practical than personal. "Amber, are your vacation days sufficient?" Dad inquired. "Indeed," I replied. "I could take 2 weeks." I chose to postpone telling anybody about my flat until after the trip. For now, let's concentrate on Hawaii. When we returned, my new house would still be there. I was anticipating more enthusiastic conversation about our impending trip to Hawaii when I arrived at my folks' place for supper the following Saturday. Rather, I discovered Lisa seated at the table, looking wretched, her eyes swollen with tears. The children were coloring at the coffee table, unusually quiet. What took place? I put down my handbag and asked. Dad and Mom looked at each other anxiously. Lisa gave a big sniff before responding. "I had a big fight with Tom," she replied, her voice breaking. "He won't cover the cost of my Hawaii vacation. He claims that he doesn't deserve a vacation, and that he isn't that exhausted from doing nothing but sitting at home." I'll wager my tongue not to bring up the fact that Lisa didn't really do much housework. Last year, Lisa complained that housekeeping caused her headaches, so Tom hired a maid. "You won't be visiting Hawaii then?" I questioned Lisa. Tragically, she shook her head. "Unless Tom has a change of heart, which he will not. He is so unyielding. It's all right." Dad gave Mom's hand a pat. "Later in the year, we'll organize another family vacation. This will not be our only opportunity." Everyone comforted Lisa about her domineering husband during the rest of the somber dinner. I said nothing. On the one hand, a peculiar mixture of pity and annoyance. Tom shouldn't make all the decisions about how the family's money is spent. However, I knew Lisa well enough to suspect that this was not the whole story. I spent the following week getting ready for my trip. When I asked for 2 weeks off, my boss immediately granted it. I am thankful for the success of my recent project. I organized my mail, packed my bag, and mentally readied myself for a 10-day stay with my folks. Without the protection of Lisa. Mom called to confirm our arrangements the day before we left. She responded, "We reserved 2 rooms. One for you, one for your father, and one for me. Our accommodations are basic, nothing special, but they will be cozy." "That sounds great," I answered. I was secretly glad we didn't have to share a room. "Tomorrow morning, I'll meet you at the airport." I hung up and surveyed my mostly deserted former flat. I had enough items here to keep things looking nice until after the trip, but the majority had already been transported to my new location. I still hadn't mentioned purchasing a flat to my folks. After we got back from Hawaii, the first made the decision to surprise them. I met my folks at the airport the next morning. After checking in and boarding the aircraft, we arrived in Honolulu 5 hours later. I was excited even though I was apprehensive about spending so much time with my parents. The air was warm and aromatic when we got off the airport. Our hotel, a mid-range establishment with a good-sized pool and beach access, was about 20 minutes from the airport. I spoke with Chi, the amiable receptionist, when I checked in. She informed me that the ordinary rooms are completely reserved. Very fortunate. You did so with concerns. Only our opulent penthouses, which are significantly more costly, are now available. I accepted the key card she gave me and nodded. I appreciate the information. I had a queen bed, a little balcony, and a shower in my basic but tidy accommodation. I unpacked, put on shorts and a t-shirt, and went to have a drink with my folks by the pool. We spent that day and the following day swimming in the water, visiting the hotel grounds, and getting used to the time change. In fact, it was nice. I discovered that I was enjoying my parents' company more than I had in years, since they were more laid back and less concerned about comparing me to Lisa. However, everything changed on the third day we were in Hawaii. In my room, I was putting on sunscreen in anticipation of a beach morning when I heard a loud bang on my door. My parents were standing there looking concerned as I opened it. Emma and Jack were holding Lisa's hands while she stood behind them looking flustered. "Lisa? Stand," I said. "Why are you here?" Lisa fell tumblingly onto my bed. I got into another big argument with Tom. I stole some cash out of his wallet and purchased tickets for the kids and myself, since I couldn't stay in that place any longer. "You took Tom's money?" Unable to conceal my surprise, I inquired. Lisa gave me a scowl. "Our money is at stake, even if he has complete control. Both the kids and I earned this break." Mom gave a reassuring nod. "You did, of course, my dear. Where are you staying, though?" Observing their bags, I inquired, "Have you reserved a room?" My dad and Lisa looked at each other. Lisa continued, her voice suddenly low. "That's the problem. I didn't have enough for a hotel stay, but I had enough for the flights. Perhaps the realization of what was happening was a shock to me," I reasoned. What Kai had informed me at check-in came back to me. Every standard room is reserved. Other from the pricey penthouses, nothing is available. "That's right," Dad murmured, staring at me straight now with a level of intensity that unnerved me. There was silence in the room. The faces of everyone were looking expectantly at me. Mom broke the quiet at last. "You must pack your belongings, Amber." "What?" Confident that I had misheard, I inquired. "Gather your belongings," she reiterated strongly. "Lisa needs your space, as do the kids." I examined their faces. Mom is adamant. Dad is expecting. Lisa became enraged and felt entitled. What precisely am I meant to do? I crossed my arms and asked. Dad gave a shrug. "If you are unable to secure a hotel, you may choose to fly home early or find another one. You don't deserve this trip as much as Lisa does." As if that resolved everything, Mom said. "She has endured a great deal with Tom." I gaped at them in shock. "Are you serious now? You want me to let Lisa use the room I've already paid for and am presently using? Because she arrived unexpectedly and took money. That's sufficient." Mom's tone was abrasive. "This cannot be discussed." Then, to my complete surprise, she went to my wardrobe, took my luggage, and started stuffing my clothing into it. "Mom, quit!" I screamed and tried to grab the suitcase from her, but she disregarded me and kept throwing my things in the bag carelessly. She put it in the hallway outside my room after zipping it up after it was filled. "There," she said. "Lisa may now settle in with the kids." Unable to comprehend what was occurring, I stood still. The children were already being instructed by Lisa to place their bags on the bed. My bed dad was carrying my toiletries into a small bag from the bathroom counter. I could have retaliated. I could have had them taken out by calling the front desk, since I was the owner of the room. I could have made a spectacle that hotel employees would have been talking about for years. However, when I looked at these individuals who were meant to be my family, I felt something inside of me shatter and then reassemble into something more solid, unambiguous, and silent. Leaving my bag in the hallway, I grabbed my purse, turned, and left. I could immediately hear Lisa and my parents talking about where to sleep. Booking the next ticket home had been my initial thought, but as I got closer to the front desk, a better plan came to me. Suddenly, I thought of the opulent penthouses Kai had described. As I walked closer, Kai glanced up, her warm grin wavering at my face. "Is everything all right, Miss Wilson?" she inquired. "Not at all. Sincerely," I said, "but I'm going to make that right. Penthouses should be accessible," you said. Her eyes became a little wider. "We do have these, however they cost a lot more than regular rooms." "How much more costly?" 2 years ago, she cited a figure that would have made me pass out. "Not even blinking." I responded, "I'll take one, please, your finest one." A porter had picked up my bag from the corridor outside my former room, and I followed him. I gasped as he opened the door to my new quarters after we rode a private lift to the top level. The apartment was gorgeous, roomy, and well-furnished. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that provided a broad perspective of the ocean. The fully furnished kitchen and dining room were connected to the living area. There was a huge bedroom beyond that, with the largest bed I had ever seen. I poured myself a glass of the complimentary champagne, opened the bottle, and went out onto the terrace. Leaning on the railing, the sun was sinking over the water, illuminating the sky with dazzling pinks and oranges. I took a long sip after saying out loud that I toasted to myself for realizing your value. I slept on a king-sized bed with sheets that felt like clouds and slept better that night than I had in years. I was awakened by the soft knock of room service bringing a free breakfast. I made the decision to go down to the beach after dining on my patio. I saw my parents and Lisa with the children close to the entrance as I was making my way across the lobby. The hotel's breakfast was too pricey, so they were leaving, perhaps to locate a less-priced one. Lisa was the first to notice me. "There you are, Amber." She waved as though we were just regular vacationing family members bumping into each other. I walked gently towards them, maintaining a neutral attitude. With a smug look, my mother said, "Where did you end up sleeping last night? Have you located another hotel?" At least Dad had the grace to appear a little uneasy. Before I could respond, Kai showed up next to me. "I would want to verify that you have a cabana reservation for this afternoon, Miss Wilson. We have the greatest spot on the beach allocated for you as our VIP visitor." The look on my family's faces changed from arrogance to perplexity. "The VIP guest," my mother said again. Kai grinned broadly. "Indeed, our first-class penthouse apartment is where Miss Wilson is staying. She is therefore entitled to all of our exclusive features, such as private meals at our fine dining establishment. I'll be having lunch with you today, Miss Wilson, along with your family." Their expressions were priceless. In fact, Lisa's mouth fell open. Mom's eyes widened. "Dad seems to have ingested something nasty." "No," I responded coolly. "They will not accompany me." "Excellent," Kai responded. "Enjoy your breakfast at Rico's, my family." Feeling lighter than I had in years, I casually waved to my startled family, referring to the inexpensive eatery down the street that budget visitors frequented. That day, I took use of all the hotel's amenities. I swam in the water and received a massage in the spa lounge in my private cabana, where friendly personnel served me tropical beverages. When it got too hot outside, I didn't think about my family at all. I went back to my penthouse that night to take a shower and get ready for supper. I had brought a basic black dress that would be ideal for the hotel's gourmet restaurant, which had a dress code. A knock on my door interrupted me while I was putting on my earrings. I saw my relatives among the individuals, everyone, even the children, carrying their bags in the corridor. I thought about acting like I wasn't there, but my curiosity won out. I opened the door but used my body to block the entry. "What are you looking for?" I didn't wait for an invitation before asking. My father, Lisa, the kids, and my mother surged past me and entered the penthouse. They were standing in my living room, admiring the opulence of the space. Mom was the first to wake up. "We've made the decision to spend the remainder of our vacation with you, Amber." Confident that I had misheard, I blinked. "Please pardon me," Dad said. "We've checked out of our rooms as though that were entirely normal. Lisa and the children also left your previous room," Lisa said, immediately examining the enormous sofa as if she were evaluating it for sleeping space. "We'll all stay here. There is plenty of space," I chuckled. I was unable to resist. "No," I said when I was able to speak once again. "You're not going to remain here. I pay for this room, and you are not allowed to use it." Lisa moved forward, her tone shifting to the wheedling she used to get what she wanted. "Don't be self-centered, Amber. Take a look at all this room. We are related." Family, I said again as my temper flared. Nobody is kicked out of their room by family. Family doesn't interfere with another person's vacation. Family members inquire about your life and acknowledge your accomplishments. This is absurd, Lisa yelled. We have already left our rooms. That sounds like a problem, I remarked, repeating what my father had stated before. Before I contact security, kindly go now. They remained still. Rather, they began to argue loudly, shouting over one another. Lisa's words cut through the crowd. Right now, you're acting quite self-centered. I have kids. I took the phone from the motel. I'm going to phone the front desk. That briefly silenced them. I requested that security visit my room in order to remove some unwelcome visitors. My family's expressions had changed from entitled rage to terror by the time I hung up. Mom said, "You can't be serious." "Very seriously," I answered. "But where are we going?" Lisa's voice cracked as she asked. Every inexpensive room is reserved. A knock on the door was heard. Hotel security had shown up in a flash. When I unlocked it, Kai and 2 security guards were inside. "Miss Wilson, is anything wrong?" she inquired. "Indeed. I need these folks out of my room." "They're also rejecting." Kai looked at my folks. "I regret to inform you that I will need to ask you to accompany me." Mom said frantically, "Wait, can't we reclaim our former rooms?" Kai gave a sympathetic shake of her head. "I apologize, but those rooms have already been redistributed to new visitors, as I said when you checked out. Now they're busy." As they trailed Kai away, my mom looked back at me. "Amber, this isn't over." Without replying, I strolled out to my patio and shut the door behind them. My mother's text messages buzzed through my phone. "The Palm Budget Motel is where we are. 5 of us in 1 room. Mold is the source of the bathroom's odor. I hope all is well with you." From Lisa, as well. "Because their mattresses are filthy, the children are sobbing. How can you treat them like this?" I put my phone down and turned it off. Once, their attempts to control me could have succeeded, but not now. I had only myself to worry about, and I was prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. My Hawaiian trip was lovely for the remainder of it. I made a conscious effort to keep my phone off most of the time, checking it only once a day to make sure there was no real emergency. After 2 days, the irate texts from my relatives suddenly ceased. Later, I learned why a hotel employee informed me that they had left the low-cost motel and had taken an early flight back to the mainland. "Only, we're going home," my mother had written in a note she left for me at the front desk. "I hope you're happy." In fact, I was more than happy. The rest of my days were spent swimming in the ocean, climbing to a waterfall, going on a sunset cruise, and basically doing anything I wanted to do without the constraints and criticism of my family. I felt like someone else, lighter, more content. As my jet took off, I felt free. Hawaii shrank under me, and I watched. Not depressed, but determined. This trip had marked a sea change. The previous state of affairs could not be restored. I took a taxi straight to my new flat after landing. It was mine, albeit it was still bare of furnishings. I made mental lists of the things I still needed to acquire as I went from room to room. I would go shopping tomorrow to get a nice dining table and perhaps some wall art. I had time to properly claim this location as my own. I was back at work and at my new flat 2 weeks after my trip to Hawaii. I would go right into a new project, speaking out more at meetings and taking on more responsibility with the confidence I had earned from confronting my family. One afternoon, my phone rang. The number belonged to my mother. Even though I had been anticipating this call, I still felt a little nervous when I answered. "Hi, where are you, Amber?" Mom said something accusing. "When we visited your former flat, they informed us that you no longer reside there." "That's right," I quietly responded. I shifted. A pause occurred. My mother's tone suddenly became delightfully intrigued as she talked again. "You made a move. To what location? Could you tell us your new address?" We should all communicate and make amends, in my opinion. Lisa's anxious murmuring was audible in the background. I claimed to have taken out a mortgage to purchase my own home. On the other end, there was a startled stillness, then muted shouts. "You purchased an apartment?" "At last," Mom said. "When? What about 2 months ago? Last year, I received a big rise and a promotion, in addition to a bonus for finishing a significant project. How come you didn't inform us?" Her voice carried hurt. But I didn't find it very moving. At what time would I have informed you? At all those family gatherings when Lisa was the only topic of conversation. Or perhaps when you ejected me from my own hotel room when I was on vacation. One more quiet, this time longer. We ought to get together and discuss this. At last, Mom said. Family members shouldn't be apart. What address do you have? We will visit this weekend. I inhaled deeply. I won't give you my address, Mom. I also don't want to meet at this time. You guys need to give me some room. Amber. Her tone became abrasive. Where is your family? You can't simply stop talking to us. I can, in fact. And that's precisely what I'm going to do until you all see why your actions have been unacceptable. Before she could answer, I hung up. My heart is racing, but I'm resolute. My family made every effort to get back in touch over the course of the following several months. They sent emails, texts, and phone calls to my work address. They alternated between being irate, begging, and manipulating. Through mutual contacts, I removed the majority before reading them completely. I had heard that there were major marital issues between Lisa and Tom. They were on the verge of divorcing because the Hawaii event had been the final straw. I briefly felt sorry for the children, but I quickly reminded myself that I had no control over Lisa's decisions. For my part, I was behind the wheel. I received another promotion. A hiking club had introduced me to new people, and I had even begun seeing someone I had met at a business conference. I had finished furnishing and decorating my flat to my liking. It served as my haven. I occasionally considered making amends with my family. Perhaps I would. If they demonstrated sincere regret and a desire to grow. I was not holding my breath, though, and I wasn't waiting for it to happen or putting my life on hold.